Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Turned Out a Punk Classics, a show where we take old episodes of Turned Out a Punk that have been lost from the internet and return them to their previous glory by sticking them back on the feed. You can find this podcast on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and all other forms of social media. Well, that's pretty much it. At Turned Out a Punk. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at Left for Damian. I play in a band. More information can be found at fuckedup.cc. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy another TOAP Classic.
Dance. If I couldn't lost my legs, I would paint. If I lost my hands, I would, you know what I mean? I don't understand people's barriers between art forms.
Well,
but I never really was a huge music guy. I can't play an instrument. I can't do anything. I can't read music. I don't even have an extensive music collection, but...
Well, that's perfect. But
Bellini's a real. He knows everything.
Well, that segues into how I want to start this podcast because what you are to me is a.
Have we started?
Yeah, I've started already.
Okay. No headphones?
No. We're just going to talk. And don't worry, I've got a thing that's going to level our levels. It's just me. It's a real small operation.
Sure.
This thing. But you know what you're saying there. You inspired me in a massive way.
Really?
In my musical performance.
Wow, that's exciting. Why?
Watching you on TV from the age of 9 till today, and watching, introducing me as this sort of obviously my parents had queer friends, gay friends,
right.
But I was still a heteronormative kind of kid.
Right.
You introduced me to a whole other world.
Oh, thank you. You said obviously. Why is that obvious?
Well, that I'm a heteronormative.
No. I mean, I know you are.
Yeah.
But why is it obvious that your parents had queer friends? Because for me, I would say it was obvious that my parents didn't have queer friends. Like, did you have a bohemian background?
My parents were very progressive. My mom was also a flight attendant.
Okay. Oh, well, God, yeah.
There were some gay male
were
flight
there?
attendants, yes.
What a shocker.
Not to stereotype or anything.
Oh, please. That's a stereotype that will never die. No. Not if I have anything to say about it.
I do know my fair share of heterosexual ones, too.
There are some now.
Yeah. But so I did, and also my dad was definitely a bohemian type in the 60s and 70s.
Okay.
Kind of to this day is kind of introduced me to a lot of cool music.
Okay, wow.
Probably actually, it would have been with him that I would have seen the Kids in the Hall for the first time.
Really?
Yeah, I really looking back on it because I can almost just vague memories of being sort of 9 years old watching stuff with him, and yeah, it would have been probably through him I would have been exposed to it first. But yeah, just the way you performed and just being a showman on stage, and the idea of performing, and that's and the Kids in the Hall. I don't think anyone, maybe even outside of Canada from that time period, obviously the humor translates for everyone, but can understand how important that show was. That show was a gateway to so much stuff.
Thank you.
For us.
It's nice to hear.
Anyway, I could go on, and this could be just a monologue, but this is about you, Scott. And I want to start at the very beginning for you, which is, do you remember the first time you ever heard punk? How'd you get into punk?
Oh, yeah, it was probably my friend Brian Preston. When I was I guess it'd be 1980. Okay. 1979 or whatever. It was when I went to the Philippines on an exchange program, and he played me the Ramones.
Wow.
Pinhead. I don't want to be a pinhead no more. Yeah. I just met a nurse that I could go for. And I went, wow, that's amazing. I thought it was fantastic. So it was the Ramones. That would have been it. And then I guess it would have been Sex Pistols. And I mean, because when I grew up, I didn't really listen to music. I wasn't really allowed to. My family, it's not that we didn't really listen to music. We were only allowed to listen to music on Sundays. My father would set the hi-fi up, and he would put on some Mitch Miller or some classical music or opera. And that was Sunday. And that was the only time during the week that we were allowed music. But some of my other brothers had albums, and we were allowed to listen to music in the basement. But my thing was books. That was my number one art form. But the first album I ever bought was would have been, I guess, grade 11. It would have been Cat Stevens' Catch Bullet 4.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah,
a great first record.
Yeah, and then but that would have been the first time I heard punk. But then and then I came back, and then I immediately felt like that spoke to, I guess, all the rage in me. Mm-hmm. That's what it was. It wasn't really a musical thing. Mm-hmm. It was more, because musically that's not what I listened to, but it certainly tapped into the incredible amount of rage that I had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where did you go from there as far as your musical, or I guess your artistic journey from that point?
Well, I mean...
Coming back from the Philippines, kind of exposed to this new...
Yeah, and then after I was away for the year, I told my parents before I left that I was going to be a journalist, because I felt that was a good kind of like gateway mm-hmm. to being like an actor. Mm-hmm. I didn't have the guts to tell them that, because back in my time, I hate saying that, but it's true. Being an actor was almost like saying you wanted to be a whore. Yeah. And it was a man saying that he wanted to be an actor meant he was gay. Mm-hmm. The only thing more gay would be you wanted to be a dancer or a makeup artist. So I kept all that very quiet. I didn't tell anybody what I wanted to do, so I thought journalism's a good gateway. It's like sometimes when men come out, they say they're bisexual, and then they become gay. And then after the year away, when I away from my family and my home and all that, I decided that I would have the courage to tell my parents what I really wanted to do, which was acting. And I applied to York University and got accepted. And so that was it. I was going to be an actor. And I was going to be an actor, not a comedian, nothing. I wanted to be an actor, like a dramatic actor, like a leading man. And I wanted to go on talk shows and be funny. And that was what I was going to be. I had no intentions of being a comedian.
I think that's sort of like talk show type of celebrity, like the Paul Williams. Like there's certain like
Burt Reynolds was one of my models. Yeah. He was an amazing guy. He was hilarious. And yet he was also a really good dramatic actor and funny too. I liked those type. I liked all the showmen of the day, like Peter Ustinov and people like that, who like the storytellers. Yeah. I thought I want to be a dramatic actor who has stories. I want to have a really great life where I can just tell stories. But music never really entered into it until I went to York. Yeah. And that's when it happened.
So what was York? Obviously, York to this day is a very progressive place as far as like open to worlds. But what was sort of some stuff that you got exposed to getting there?
Well, I met people in my life that I still have in my life, like friends and collaborators that I still work with, Paul Bellini and Brian Hiltz, Tom King. These are these old friends of mine. And that was when I started to realize that I could be creative. Like the way I grew up, I had 4 brothers, so I grew up in a pretty, masculine world, and everything was about sports and that sort of thing. So I had to keep my truth inside. But once I went to York, I just let my freak flag fly. I felt like I was actually a teenager then. Yeah. Also because I was gay, I think that especially gay men back then, your adolescence happened much later. Like I feel like I really became an adolescent in my 20s. Mm-hmm. I feel that what happened when I was in high school, it counts, of course. But all my friends it was all like heavy metal and like, like hard rock. Yeah. Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and that sort of thing.
Was Rush not yet?
Rush was around. We didn't listen to that, but it was all like, and like Genesis, prog rock and all that sort of thing. And I liked it. But it wasn't what I really liked. This is weird. I really liked black music, like R&B and soul music, but that was and funk. But that was another thing that made people question you. Mm-hmm. Like a white kid was not allowed to listen to black music. Mm-hmm. That was another thing that said you might be gay, because black music led to dancing, and when a white boy danced, that meant he was gay. See, now white boys are allowed to dance, and it's a wonderful world. But back then, no. White kids weren't even allowed. They were not allowed to move.
You just stayed in your lane, I guess?
That's what being masculine was, not having any kind of like articulation in your pelvic area.
Unless you're Elvis.
Yeah. So, and then I met when I went to York, we just started... I just felt like I could do anything. Like I started writing for the school newspaper. I started writing poems. I started doing acting, and I was in acting. And then I started doing comedy. And then, we did form a punk band very briefly at York called the Plastic Gumby Bums.
Really? Mm-hmm. Did that record?
No.
Oh,
and it was we did it. It was me and Albert Schultz, who now runs Soul Pepper.
Wow, really?
Yeah. And also Darlene Harrison, who's now Darlene Treen. And Darlene and I would dress up as Gumby and Pokey, and we would sing Gumby and Pokey songs in punk. Like our first song was We did Gumby and Pokey. Do you remember Gumby?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Theme song was, he was once a little green slab of clay. Gumby! You should see what Gumby can do today! That sort of thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then
did you guys play around York? Sorry.
No, we just did like stuff, some cabarets. It wasn't a band. It was like more of a cabaret thing. But the very first time I saw a punk band was Teenage Head.
Amazing band.
And we wore garbage bags. I wore garbage bags and hangers. That's
awesome.
what I wore. We made outfits of garbage bags and hangers, and we went, and it turned into a mini riot. As a lot of shows with Teenage Head did that in those days.
Where was the show?
Not the Ontario place.
No, I know the other.
At York.
At York, really?
And it turned into a brawl, and windows were broken, and glasses were smashed, and it was. That's me. Sorry, but
no, please.
Oh, that's you.
No, I don't think so.
And I was hooked after that.
Wow.
It is me, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is.
Oh, well. No, I don't need. I'm not going to answer the phone. But for me, it was the idea that I could like perform and that you could actually. No. It's all right. And I could get all my rage out was really exciting. Wow. I like that a lot. So that's what I was really, and I just was. And then I started, reading about all what's happening in England, et cetera. And then I started to go to shows here, like the Diodes and the Dishes and people like that. And I'll be honest, I'm not very smart musically. My whole thing was I just like slam dancing and getting drunk and getting my aggression out.
Yeah.
And. So that was just the greatest opportunity to get that aggression out, and I'm still trying to get the aggression out.
Well, it can be a safe space to get aggression out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I discovered that I had a real abandon on stage, and then but then we formed our band, and then after York.
Well, sorry, just back to, I don't want to gloss over Toronto, because you're in my wheelhouse of these Toronto punk bands that you brought up and stuff.
Yeah.
So did you, with the Dishes, did you talk to those guys?
No,
and meet those guys?
I would just go with some of my friends and we would just get drunk and then...
So were you going to like Crash and Burn, or what were the plans and stuff?
Yeah, and there was a place on Bloor Street.
Turning Point?
Turning Point! Yeah. Yes!
I got a lot of amazing flyers.
My brother and I went to Turning Point once, and I think it might have been the Diodes.
Yeah.
And it didn't turn into a riot, but my brother and I got into a big brawl.
Wow.
It was a really bonding evening.
That's insane.
Yeah. I wasn't a fighter.
So did your brother get into punk too?
My brother was a fighter.
Okay.
He just was a tough guy.
Yeah.
No, he wasn't really into punk. He just liked to fight.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's there.
Yeah.
There for other reasons.
He was good to go out. It was good to go out with because he was much bigger than me.
Yeah.
And strong and looked scarier, and he got into a lot of fights.
Wow. So, did you ever see like the band The Hate or The Ugly Models? There's all these other Toronto bands that are like. I'm just trying to think of some other Turning Point bands. The Ugly.
Yes.
Oh, I love that band. Viletones. Did you ever see the Viletones?
Yeah.
And stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. What were those shows?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I loved. I mean, people. I just love the idea of spitting and taking your clothes. And then when Bleeding, I formed Mouth Congress. That was really what informed the way I performed. I took my clothes off a lot. I fucked a lot of monitors. I was because I didn't really have the great, I don't have a great voice. I don't really have any skill.
Well, I want to get to Meth Congress because you downplay it, but I think it might be one of the most underrated things I've discovered. No, I don't know if did you ever just hear the band The Homosexuals from England? They're this other band that had this incredible breadth of output that they put out, but it's vaguely reminiscent of that, and it's reminiscent of like a lot of British DIY stuff, and I love it.
That's so cool.
It's got that amateur.
Yeah, we're very amateur.
But that is not like, obviously that's something that's a negative for so many people, but I mean it in the most perfect.
Well, we were amateur, but our musicians were real musicians.
No, exactly,
but they're all real musicians.
Yeah.
Paul and I were just.
That's what I mean.
Weirdos.
I mean amateur in the same way you like Beat Happening because it's amateurish, or like the same way that people call the Fugs amateurish.
Right.
Like these bands that are perfect in their own ways. But once again, we can get there. But I love just talking about all this old punk stuff that you saw and stuff like that.
I did. It was the first time I ever really listened to music that I felt included.
Did you see any of the performance stuff were there any performance art stuff that you went to?
Yeah, like I saw Karen Quinlan.
Yeah.
Chevalier Yam pussy, that sort of thing. Yeah, I did a lot of those crazy things. Like I went to one of those, I can't remember, what was her name? She used to do a thing where, what was her name? She would let you investigate her vagina.
Annie Sprinkle?
Annie Sprinkle. Yeah, I went to an Annie Sprinkle. That was my first close-up of a vagina. Remember you go up to the front and you'd have.
I've seen performance videos.
Crazy stuff back then.
Yeah, that's it. Well, so
performance art was just out of.
It was happening.
It was
too.
It was invented. It seemed like it was just being invented.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that I think and I look back on that stuff. That was the cutting edge of it, I guess, right into the mid '80s to the late '80s too. People are still doing Lydia Lunch.
Yeah, Lydia Lunch. Yeah, I was at a party with Lydia Lunch, and we were all just out of our minds.
Was that like in the when she was like in the bands back then or later?
Yes, this is it's like I guess 1980 or whatever.
That's awesome.
Some party at Spadina, Wild Bash, and there was Lydia Lunch and some ghastly looking ghoulish men with her, and we were just like, oh, it's Lydia Lunch. I mean, she was a big deal.
Oh, absolutely. To this day, she's a big deal.
Yeah, she was a big deal, and she did like those weird films. Didn't she have sex on film and stuff?
Fingered.
Yeah, fingered.
Nick Zedd. She did all that stuff with Nick Zedd and the transgression stuff.
Yeah,
I've always wondered, did that inform the Kids in the Hall at all? Like that? Because
I think so.
Yeah, because
when there was a true underground.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because I've always felt like it was to that whole culture of. Underground videos, tape trading type thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, and all those weird those weird magazines that people had.
Yeah.
There was this one magazine that was all like about serial killers and
Answer Me. Yeah. It's an insane.
You couldn't do something like that today.
No.
I mean, didn't it have a serial killer on the cover?
Yeah, they had some covers that were like just beyond horrific. It is
horrific.
It is insane, and it's funny because that stuff informs other stuff that goes on to become actually part of mainstream pop culture too.
Yeah.
But it's weird when you go back and it's like how could someone make that?
I know. And you pass those things around.
Yeah.
And you felt like you were really in the know, and anybody on the mainstream would never discover this. Yeah. And I don't know if that's a lot more difficult nowadays, I think.
Yeah.
But there was a true underground, and absolutely the Kids in the Hall were influenced by that. And I mean, the other four, far more than me, were very, very influenced by music.
Yeah. But I think the thing that I'm finding fascinating is the performance side of it, because that to me is, I think, punk, there's a lot of things people can take from it as far as the genre goes. Musicality is not normally one of them that people take away.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that you got that live release, that live energy, that to me is like one of the pillars of it.
Well, that's what it was. It was just like that whole move that I could and I used to just do things. And I mean, I was one, I would put safety pins in my ears and that sort of thing. I used to do a thing where I would glue cigarette butts to my ears.
With crazy glue or something?
Yeah. Not crazy, just regular glue I could take off at the end of the day.
Glue
butts.
Wow, really?
I would just put butts in my ear.
Wow, that's a performance thing I've never heard.
I used to wear, and I'd wear them with a strand of pearls, like 3 strands of pearls, and my hair this high.
So did you see, no, I don't think the Screamers ever played here. I'm trying to think of some of the other bands, the Nerves, did you see the Nerves?
No, I don't think so.
What about some that, the Mumps, did the Mumps play here ever?
I think so, I didn't see them, but Paul probably did. Paul saw everything.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some of the other, what were some, more aggressive, was there any more of aggressive music that you were kind of into, like electronic stuff that was kind of like Throbbing Gristle?
Paul was.
Yeah.
Paul was really influenced by Throbbing Gristle.
Really?
Yes. I couldn't listen to it.
No?
I found it too scary.
Really?
Yeah.
But the vibe is so scary that
I know it is.
Out.
Maybe, correct me if I'm wrong here.
Yeah.
Was it not Throbbing Gristle who made those weird underground films where they have sex where they fuck a skull?
Oh.
Do you know this footage?
I don't know. Maybe.
There's this footage, and I'm certain it's Throbbing Gristle or one of those, or Skinny Puppy or one of those weird bands from the
probably,
day.
But Skinny Puppy used to have those insane videos.
Well, there's this one video, and I don't know, maybe it was a nightmare that didn't really happen, or maybe I'm going to get arrested after this, but I remember Paul, because Paul has an insane collection of everything, and there was this footage of with a severed head or something.
I think it's Skinny Puppy, because that was the thing you had. Skinny Puppy, when they would play live, they would show these insane, horrific videos.
Like maybe it was a fake head but
you hope. You really
I hope so.
You really
but no, I mean, Paul was very influenced by that. I'm pretty mainstream. I like melody.
Yeah.
I really like. I have to have a rhythm, and that. But punk was more like therapy for me.
Yeah.
And also, I think about music for me, like Mouth Congress, which is what our band was for me very much just a way for me to. It sounds weird, but to have sex.
Really?
I don't mean really sex. I mean that, we're gay men. We came of age at the height of the plague. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want to die.
Yeah.
But I was a young man, and I was horny all the time. So I think I turned my libido into creativity. So Mouth Congress, and Paul would say the opposite, and we're different. Mm-hmm. I would say for me, it was very much a way for me not to get AIDS. Does that make sense? That I can go on stage and I can get it all out of my system, and then I won't have sex. I was terrified of sex.
Wow.
And I know that sounds weird. Like, most people get into a rock band to get laid, but I went into a rock band to not get laid, so that I could get my sexual energy out creatively and survive.
Yeah, like, you know what?
That makes sense.
It does, like, obviously not having to worry about the same sorts of fears, but like I think for me, sex has never been a part of my band. Doing what I do in this band, like the sexual component of it.
You didn't do it to get girls?
No.
But you probably did get girls.
No, I kind of I was dating someone when we started the band, and then we broke up, and I'd known my person that I'm married to now, kind of through her cousin, who I was my roommate at the time, and then so we met and became friends and started dating, and that was it. Like I've really, like it's almost like the music was just the release of energy on stage is so much that there's no time for sex afterwards. There's nothing left.
Well, I mean, I think they're so connected.
Yeah.
I mean,
I guess you're right. Like there is a sexual, there's a obvious sexual component to it, but
totally.
But you're right. Like I kind of know kind of the release idea where it's not like. Yeah, I never looked at music.
I never did either. Like I've never looked at my career as a way to get guys. Because first of all, it doesn't work for gay men that way anyways. Yeah. So it would work for women. It does work for women, but it does not work for men. And so it was, I really do it because I have to. Mm-hmm. I'm an artist, so I have to. And so it doesn't matter what the medium is. If I'm not allowed to do one, I'll do something else.
So between the Gumby Band and Mouth Congress,
and that was the Gumby Band is a very tiny chapter.
Well, yeah, but I mean, obviously. But did you try any other musical projects? Like not necessarily even punk, but like other.
I don't think so. I did musical theater.
Yeah.
Like at York.
Yeah.
I
had you
sort of thing.
Had you sung like obviously?
I had sung. Yeah, in high school.
In high school and stuff.
Yeah, I'd done The Boyfriend.
Yeah.
So I definitely had sung, and I was in a special choir when I was a kid. But no. And I didn't even. I really didn't have any idea how like a front man was supposed to behave.
Yeah.
My model would be like Johnny Rotten, or I'm more Sid Vicious, which is tragic because I related to him because he had no musical talent.
Or Steve Leckie from the sounds.
Steve Leckie, I liked a lot.
Yeah, like was when you
he used to cut himself.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like when you were seeing him on stage, like there's stories about him stabbing himself.
Yeah, I
with
remember
pens
that. He used to slash himself with glass and stuff.
Wow.
And I didn't go that far. No. But I have to say, I did like leaving the stage bleeding. Mm-hmm. I mean,
that was my gimmick early on too. Was always bleeding.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't know, like and obviously with infectious disease being bloodborne and like it's like obviously not HIV/AIDS, but like with more like Hep C and other things that survive. I now regret doing a lot of this stuff.
Do you? Well, you didn't get anything, did you?
No. But I mean, but I just be like exposing people to that kind of fear at that times. Also, the dumbest thing I've ever done on stage is one time Iggy Pop inspired covered myself in peanut butter.
Oh.
But Iggy Pop did it. No one had peanut butter allergies. When I did it, people died from that shit.
Yeah, Iggy Pop was amazing. He was another. I loved his performance was
incredible.
Yeah, he's the greatest.
Did you ever see him, the Stooges? You never saw the Stooges?
No.
I kind of think though Steve Leckie was like, if Toronto's the New York with training wheels, Steve Leckie is the Toronto Iggy Pop. Like Absolutely. He was doing the same sort of stuff.
Yeah, he really was. So yeah, that was basically what it was for me, and I still didn't want to be a comedian, but it was a great way to be funny, and I kept finding that I like being funny. I mean, I always liked being funny.
Yeah.
But I didn't really think that there was a possibility that I could actually be a comedian, because a comedian, the kinds that I like, have to talk about their lives. Mm-hmm. And there was no way I could possibly talk about my life and have a real career. Like, real life, like sex and love and all that, relationships and all that sort of thing. It wasn't allowed. Mm-hmm. It really was not allowed. But music was exciting because it made me feel like a man. I felt like dynamic. I felt sexual and not a sissy. And a lot of it was probably revenge against men in a way, just rock itself, how excluded I'd felt. Also like the idea that I could be wilder than any straight guy. Helped me. Yeah, it made me feel really good. I know that's probably not healthy. But Bellini and I, two fags fronting a band in the 80s, was gay man. That was just not done. There was a lot of abuse from other bands and stuff like that.
Well, I want to get into this now. How did Mouth Congress actually start? Like, how'd you guys...
We just started recording. It was like, basically, it's all Paul. Paul and Brian. Brian Hiltz had a band called I Want, and we started playing with them. And we just started rehearsing, I guess, in Bellini's basement. I guess he bought a beatbox and one of the very first video cameras, when they were out, people could get them.
Yeah.
And he just started recording everything. Paul is one of the greatest archivists ever. He has everything. Our whole group of creative people, it's all on tape.
Wow.
He has and we're making a documentary about Mouth Congress now.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Paul's directing it.
So you guys were filming right away?
From day one. From day one, everything is recorded. And we just started, he had a beatbox, we just started making up songs. And I thought it was so much fun.
Yeah.
And we used to smoke pot, go to the basement, and just improvise for hours and hours and hours. And that's, for him, he wouldn't say that. For me, it stopped me from going out and dying.
Yeah.
And I just found it such fun. And friends were always being brought in to do stuff. There was no sense of like, you're not in the band or you can't do anything. Our philosophy was everybody can do anything. Creativity is, everybody can be creative if they want to be. So people would just come in, they'd be visiting and go, let's go down and do some songs. All of the kids in the hall are in it.
Are all those recordings?
Yeah, like Kevin's in lots of songs. Bruce is the only one that's not in anything.
Really?
Yeah.
That is weird that he's not. He's the only one who doesn't show up.
Not weird, but...
Well, maybe not weird.
Not weird.
Okay.
Well, Bruce is a real purist.
Yeah.
And he loved us.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, Bruce was our biggest fan. He was the first one that allowed us to perform. We opened for Kids in the Hall one time. We sang one of the first songs we ever wrote was called Holy Ghost. Like an 11-minute song about the catechism, basically.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so he thought we were insane. I mean, people would come and see us. We never had any following of any kind, really. But people just couldn't believe what we were doing, because every time we did a show, we would do all new material. And we would not repeat it. And then we'd do another one.
So when you guys were writing, because there is this breadth of music that is just staggering.
It is staggering.
And it's like, that's why like the only band I can liken it to is a band like the Homosexuals, who have this like other thing where it's like just like so many songs and they're all cool. And was it like where you guys were writing songs where you're like, okay, those songs are written, performed, let's write new ones?
No, it depended. As we went along, we would just do them, make them up, move on.
Yeah.
And then we started to perform them.
Do you have any favorites that became crowd like
yeah,
that you were like, we have
off hours was some. We have to do off hours.
Yeah.
We have to do Young and Alive, or we have to do Tactile.
Yeah.
So there were some songs, and then we started to actually work on them. Like we started to actually take the improvised lyrics and then try to work them and give them actual shape, like choruses and verses and all that sort of thing. I didn't understand any of it. And that was when I first started to learn how to write, basically. but it was all lyrics, and I enjoyed that very much. But there were other songs, we just did them and we never went back to them. So when Paul downloaded everything to is it Chart Attack?
Yeah, Chart Attack, yeah.
I haven't heard them in years and years. I'm like, oh my God, I can't remember this. But I honestly do remember almost everything, because I remember in my head how I was, what we were doing that day.
Yeah.
More than I remember almost anything. And it's just been a real joy.
Yeah.
Realizing how creative we were, and yeah.
And like, this is also, I guess, to speak about how under-recognized the band was at the time.
We had absolutely zero.
Yeah, because I'm a nerd.
Following.
I'm a nerd about punk in Toronto,
Right.
and when that Chart Attack thing came out, it was like, how did I not know this?
Oh, we had no following.
What other, like you mentioned, opening for the Kids was like your first show.
Yeah, we played everywhere in Toronto.
What were were there any local bands where you played with Fifth Column, or like were there any bands?
Yeah, I think we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there any bands that you felt like this is a local kinship with this band?
No.
Was there? Because
we didn't really consider ourselves a band. We were just considered more of a collective.
Yeah.
And because we also made videos all the time as well. And then Paul and I started improvising, and then I started creating characters. Mm-hmm. And we formed Mouth Clone at the same time that I met the kids in the hall. So they were all kind of going along at the same time.
Yeah.
And I had to make a choice one day between what's gonna go.
Yeah.
And it was very obvious that Kids in the Hall was going to go. Well, I knew that from day one. I mean, when I met the kids in the hall, I knew. I said to my friend, I'm going to be in that group. We're going to be huge.
Yeah.
And she's like, you don't even know them? I go, yeah, but I know. You just know certain things. Like love at first sight, basically. And Mouth Congress, we still continued to perform and write. And even during the first few years of Kids in the Hall, Paul and I would still write songs.
Yeah. What came out back then? Did you guys put a demo tape, or was
we did one proper demo tape, I think it's called For People Only.
That's on number one on my want list now.
Yeah, actually we did it in a little studio in a guy's house.
Yeah.
And recorded it, and not really well, but yeah, we did that. But that was the only professional thing we ever did.
Wow. And so that came out, was actually, you guys sold that at gigs, I would imagine.
A cassette tape.
That's awesome. I gotta find that.
But I mean, I don't know. We were never. We had no following.
Yeah.
And
so what, like, because like was JD's, was Bruce LaBruce doing JD's yet? Was that like
that time? The zine era.
Yeah. Was it? So because like Toronto.
You do know old Toronto.
Oh, this is like we're talking about.
Well, I went to school with Blab.
Yeah.
Bruce LaBruce.
Yeah.
So we were all in the same group.
Yeah.
We were all in the same year.
Yeah. Did you feel like, obviously you didn't feel a lot of kinship to a lot of the bands? You mentioned the abuse from some of these bands that you were getting at the time.
Yeah, there was. No, I definitely felt a kinship with Bruce LaBruce.
Yeah, like Bruce
Absolutely.
LaBruce.
That was another model for like how you could be gay and a punk.
Yeah.
And that didn't seem possible until people like Bruce LaBruce, etc. Because it was always like, when you're gay, you're a sissy, and therefore you're excluded from that world. Mm-hmm. And punk was seen as a pretty male world. And even though there were definitely women in it, but women had to kind of ape male behavior to really fit in. Did you know what I mean? Did
you know that the Dishes were gay, or that there were gay men in the Dishes back then, or no?
No, they were
no. People weren't open, I guess.
People weren't openly gay back then.
Yeah.
Oh, it was bad enough. No. I didn't know. I just knew that now. I had no idea.
Oh, okay. No. Yeah. No, it's. I guess it was. It's so. Having the benefit of being around now, where things are obviously a little more open.
It's like a different planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with Mouth Congress, not that I don't want you to name names or things like that, but where was the abuse coming from? Like, what scene was it? Was it like punk bands, or was it
everyone?
Wow. And
it just didn't seem right that we would be singing faggot stuff.
Was it the fear of the homophobia, or is it just like you're not doing punk the right way, quote unquote, or is it like? But obviously, it's all rooted in homophobia.
It's all rooted in homophobia. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, we got yelled at a lot. We got. There was definitely abuse.
Yeah.
But I didn't care. I mean, you have to remember in those days too, like there was a real sense of like for Paul and I as well, like for gay men growing up, coming of age in the 80s, mm-hmm. It was such a sense of like you were in the middle of a nightmare that would never end, and everybody would die, and you probably wouldn't make it through anyways. So there was a kind of a sense of abandon, and like for me, like, well, you know what I mean? I'll probably not get old anyways, you know. So it was very much like, like nothing to lose, and I think that might have been what informed some of my craziness on stage. Although I think I'm generally like that. I mean, I just am fairly uncontrolled.
Yeah.
But definitely there was tons of homophobia in comedy and music. Tons.
Was there, not to move on if you want to, because like,
I don't mind.
because I think, like obviously there's still homophobia in punk rock, and it's still
absolutely.
Like, and it's not like it's better now, and I don't want to pretend like it is for people that are still dealing with it.
Well, homophobia hip hop is insane.
And
they get away with murder. It's unbelievable.
In all culture, it's like it's prevalent in all culture today, and it's just as horrific.
Well, even homophobia, like people think that gay marriage solves everything. It barely solves anything. It's just really just a way to corral gay men, but it doesn't really deal with the ultimate issue, which is sex. Like even the idea that love wins, I find disingenuous. It's not even true. When you say that love wins when everyone put love wins after gay marriage passed in the States, I'm going, that's bullshit. Sex wins. Because you've always been free to love whoever you want. You've never been free to fuck whoever you want. So to take the sex out of it is a form of, I believe, castration of gay men. It's me again.
Okay.
No,
please, if you want
I
to pause.
can't now. It's okay. It's okay. But we were just like, I guess I was very much like fucking the audience.
Yeah. I wish I've seen you guys. I can't wait.
We have footage.
I can't wait to see this
Oh,
footage.
Whaley, some of the footage, like Paul was talking about, I can't even believe it's me.
That's amazing.
Like I'm so out of control.
Wow. So when you ended Mouth Congress, was that like kind of like did you feel like you had not exercised?
We never really ended it.
But you never ended it. Like you just put it on pause. Like
We're still writing songs.
Still writing songs.
We just did a new. We just wrote a bunch of songs.
Should I pause?
Do you mind?
No, please. Wait,
Can you see the goose egg in my forehead?
I can see a little bit of it. Yeah, you get a bump.
Last night, I walked off stage and I ran into a speaker.
Holy!
I almost knocked myself out.
It's like Mouth Congress all over again.
Yeah, you see, I'm always injured, and so I kind of felt like, It's been a long time since I walked off stage, and I didn't actually bleed. So.
No, well, that could be the next time. Then now you got your well, now you got the Mouth Congress reunion might be coming up. So you mentioned you guys continue recording. Were you recording?
We did it about a year ago. We did some sessions where Paul and I just rented a studio. We went in and we did about 5 sessions. We would just improvise stuff.
Yeah.
And then went to Halifax a couple years ago with Brian, and we did more stuff. So we're turning these tracks into songs.
That's awesome.
Because we're working on a documentary. Paul's going to direct a Mouth Congress documentary with all the footage, and we're making it this year. And so going through all the footage, every show is taped.
Yeah.
All of our rehearsals are taped. Everything. There's so much footage. It's crazy.
That's incredible.
There's this whole group of young people, like in their prime.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing because you live in this era where everything's been discovered, and so for something to like for me to like be like, oh, there's just so much to go through, and it's like a whole world.
That's so cool
that I didn't even know.
Paul will be thrilled.
No, I really, and it's like and they're good. Like that's the thing about it is like
they're entertaining.
No, and I think they're actually like there's some melody and like there's like I don't know, they're good songs.
There are some. Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, there's obviously songs that were joke songs that you're just doing, but like there's also
and the thing is, as it went along, we discovered both of us that we were funny. I mean, I always knew it was funny.
Yeah.
But that comedy was a real thing, and then when we would perform, the introductions got longer and longer.
Yeah.
And then they and then I started. Sometimes I would even perform in character.
Wow.
And so I was basically moving more and more into becoming a comedian.
Yeah.
And like I do a character called Madame Alphonse, and we would do shows where it's Madame Alphonse. I did it all in drag with her sons who played the band. That would pretend my sons, and we're touring around, and we're touring lonely homosexuals' apartments. And Mark played the lonely homosexual. And we come to his apartment. We burst in with me and my boys, like, you know, like almost like Ma Barker and her boys.
Yeah.
And we just, Mark's like, oh, Jesus, he's making Bodum coffee. And we stage a show all at the Rivoli. And Mark's on stage watching it, making coffee. We did crazy shows. Crazy shows. And we did one show called The Layered Look.
Yeah.
Where Paul and I wore we did like 7 songs, but we wore 7 outfits, all on.
Layered.
So we started off like, you know, like the Michelin Man.
Yeah.
And each song had a different look. And so we would take the clothes off and it ended with me basically
naked.
In a almost pretty much.
All naked.
Pretty much.
Did you ever get banned from venues for these performances? You messed with the monitors.
No, we got thrown out of El Macombo.
You got thrown out of the Elmo.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I got into a brawl. Not actually a brawl, but a guy attacked me at the El Macombo.
Oh, that sounds not so awesome.
Yeah, I was with Kevin actually, and I think Kevin was with us and Paul, and it turned ugly. I can't remember. They always start with one word: faggot. That's right.
Yeah.
And I'm like a bull. Red flag. I can't. I mean, now I can control myself.
Yeah.
But I couldn't then.
And Toronto, you know, and not to talk about your history or anything like that, but Toronto at that time, post homophobia in the wake of like the 1970s and the shoe shine boy and just like the hatred in Toronto that you read about.
Well, I remember when I was at York University on Halloween. You'd come to Yonge Street and the Park Side and the St. Charles. They were the gay bars on Yonge Street. And people would gather outside the bars. This is like 1979, 1980. I guess early 80s even. Because I was at York. I started York. Yeah, it'd be like 1980, 81, 82. Even before AIDS even, people knew about it. And people would gather outside the bars and mock the drag queens. Jeer them. And it was considered like normal.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that, being like a young gay guy from York, seeing that behavior, and it tells you you can't. I didn't even come out. I didn't even really come out. I was in acting, and I still didn't come out. I mean, that's bad.
Yeah. It's because like now it's kind of like mythical, the queercore scene that came out of Toronto and the queer zine scene. But it came as it had to be there because it was a reaction to this.
Yeah, what was Bruce LaBruce's partner? The girl,
Carolyn from.
She had initials.
GB.
GB.
Yeah.
Yeah.
GB Jones.
Yeah.
From Fifth Column.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, they were a lesbian band, right? But that was different. Lesbians were much more accepted. It's always been the way. Lesbians, I think, are considered because they move up. And they take on male behavior, so they're accepted more. But gay men fall, that's my theory, and they move away from masculinity, so they're not as accepted. And therefore, I think like lesbians could definitely, like Carol Pope was a huge influence. Carol Pope could front a band, but you couldn't. A gay man couldn't have fronted a band like that.
Yeah, because the only band I can think of were with a openly gay singer from back. Well, obviously, Jane County.
Right, I mean transsexual.
And then later on, and then Lance Loud from the Mumps.
Oh yeah, and also what's the guy saying? Glad to be gay. Tom Robinson.
Yeah, Tom Robinson. Yeah, TBR. Yeah.
And then there were people that you kind of thought might be gay.
Well, the Screamers, I don't know if you know them. They're like an electronic. It was like
I didn't know them.
Pretty awesome. I don't think they ever played here. They were supposed to play here. I don't think they actually.
There was like people like you thought they must be gay. Like that's things that. Sam Plan Pour Moi.
Patrick Bertrand.
Yeah. People like that. You go,
Elton
must be, or like Cabaret Voltaire, or people.
Like Darby Crash from the Germs. Like people now say that's probably why he killed himself, is because he couldn't deal with.
That's
the fact
probably
that he couldn't
true.
Come out.
Yeah, it's probably true.
And it's like the homophobia stuff, and it's funny because Toronto gets like it's like the liberal city, quote unquote, and punk gets a pass too, but it's just as fucked up.
Oh yeah, no one behaved well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of revisionism going on in popular culture because I think people don't want to accept how bad they were. But that's okay. That's understandable. I mean, that's human nature. even when you're in the middle of it, you don't quite realize. It's only years later that you realize, God, that wasn't good. But when most people just do what society tells them to do. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
You can't really lose sleep over it, right? It's like losing sleep over human nature.
Yeah. That's true.
It's dumb. You can do your best, but you can't really change the essential nature of humans. And it's ugly. And it's war. That's how I see it.
Well, let's move on to much more positive topics. I guess might be much more positive, but talking about revisionist history, when Kids in the Hall, blew up and became the Canadian institution,
right.
Did a lot of these people kind of come back, like these people that had been yelling shit at
No, it was very, basically the history of the Kids in the Hall was very similar.
Yeah.
People misunderstood us completely. We were seen as the gay group. The other four, even though they're not gay, they were all tarred with the same brush.
Yeah.
And I really believe that all their careers were hurt by it, not just me. My career is different. My career absolutely was hurt by it. But I deserved it. I don't mean that. I mean that I took, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I took the hit.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't. They shouldn't have had to pay for that, being branded as gay. And I think it really hurt all of us. But we were seen as the gay band, the gay group, and just because they were so willing to go on this journey together, all of us. Basically, the idea was that whatever you are, gay, straight, bisexual, whatever, it's all equal. And that was revolutionary. But I remember doing things like Running Faggot, which Bruce wrote as a kind of a tribute to me. And people afterwards saying things like, "We love that you stick it to the fags," like that. And people misinterpret us all the time.
Yeah.
But and us putting on dresses and kissing each other and all that, that felt very punk.
It did.
Like guys making out back then was punk.
Yeah.
That was really radical.
Yeah.
And that's a real finger to society.
It was on TV. It was like and it was like you didn't see men kissing on TV.
And see, I think their behavior, like making out with each other, dressing in drag, was very punk.
Yeah.
For them. Me too, but much more natural for me.
Yeah.
But that was a real punk move. I think it really gave them a real thrill to know that it pissed guys off.
Yeah.
Well, people, not even just guys, girls too. Girls can be just as homophobic.
Oh yeah.
So, we were just punks. We were just really rebelling against everything. We were very much like the Wild Ones. You know that Marlon Brando quote?
Yeah.
What are you rebelling against?
What do you got?
Yeah, what do you got? So we were five angry young guys who felt, I guess, cheated.
Well, one person we've kind of not talked about, who I got to talk about because he does come with the Kids in the Hall and he's been a guest on this podcast, Don Pyle.
Don Pyle,
from
yeah.
Shadowy Men.
Don Pyle was amazing, and Don Pyle was like Shadowy Men were they were so much part of who we are.
Yeah.
And Don was the first person that I saw in music, like rock music, that was gay. I mean, he drummed. Mm-hmm. I mean, and he was masculine and sexy, and that was huge for me. I can't believe I said Don Pyle. I always had a crush on Don.
He's a good-looking guy.
I was very attracted to Don. But, the idea that you could actually not be a sissy was quite radical and revolutionary for me. And they accepted him the same way that the group accepted me. Mm-hmm. They didn't make any allowances. They didn't tiptoe. So we were very similar that way. But I loved their music, and it was just a no-brainer that they were going to be our soundtrack.
So did you know him when he was in Crash Kills 5? Like, did you know him back?
I knew him, yeah.
Yeah, back then?
But that really comes through Bruce. The Shadowy Men thing came through Bruce. Bruce grew up with Reed and what's his name? Brian.
Brian, yeah. One thing we also got to talk about before I let you go, and thank you so much for taking all this time.
I don't mind at all.
Okay, because
I'm enjoying this.
The Kids in the Hall Brain Candy soundtrack. This is how we are de facto label mates.
Oh, okay.
Matador Records put it out.
Yes.
Which is put out a bunch of records by us.
Oh, cool.
But I heard an amazing story because I obviously when we got signed to Matador, one of the first things we wanted to ask him about was Brain Candy and the soundtrack for Brain Candy. And so we're asking about Brain Candy and the soundtrack, and they were telling us, how it came about and like which person brought which song. And apparently you brought Shampoo.
Shampoo?
Yeah, like Shampoo on the soundtrack.
Oh.
That band Shampoo. You suggested.
Don't even remember.
Apparently, Gerard Cosloy, who's also been on the podcast, but he said that in the meeting that you said, what do you have on this, and I'm not going to say the word because it's not my word, but what do you have on the soundtrack for the blanks?
For the fags.
Yeah. And he said, what do you mean? And you're like, this is all straight guy music. And you're like, well, and they were like, what do you want? And you're like, Shampoo. And it was the most expensive song.
Was it really?
Yeah, the most expensive sync to get on that soundtrack. But I love Shampoo.
Yeah.
They're incredible.
That's good.
So, but were you like a fan of theirs at the time?
I probably just heard it, and then Bellini said, say Shampoo. I always took my cues from Paul. What should I say? Shampoo. Really? Yeah.
That's awesome.
Cheapo matter. The others will take care of them. But it's a pretty good soundtrack.
It's a great soundtrack.
Yeah, it is. Paul Bellini has a song on it.
Yeah, and Tragically Hip, I think, have a song on it too. Yeah. And like, no, it's a classic soundtrack.
Yeah, Bud Swiggly, and that's the Tragically Hip song.
Tragically, yeah. Why do you think that movie didn't get the reception it deserved?
Oh man, so many reasons. Well, at the time, I believed it was because Hollywood was run by closet cases on Prozac.
That could be one.
That's really what I think.
It really is ahead of its time.
Yeah, it really
like
is.
If it had come out now, where people are kind of questioning the over-prescribing of...
We were way ahead of the game that way. It was just the beginning of the antidepressant revolution.
Yeah.
And we started hearing about people in our circle that were on Prozac or, serotonin suppressants and things like that, and it was shocking. Mm-hmm. And that's where it came from. Really, it's that simple. But it was before. It was just the beginning of the I guess the medicalization of depression.
Yeah.
And turning it, back then you used to just call it the blues, or you just get over it. But I didn't think it was. I think we just kind of sensed that it would go someplace bad.
Yeah.
I think it bombed because, well, so many reasons. There was that we were taking on the medical industry, and the pharmaceutical industry, homophobia, no question. I don't think Paramount had any idea who we really were. They knew that Lorne had one more movie with them, and he gave them us. And they had no idea. And suddenly there's like 5 guys, they cross-dress, they kiss each other. They didn't know this is not an Adam Sandler movie.
Yeah, it's not Coneheads.
No, it's not Coneheads. And so all those reasons, plus it was a satire.
Yeah.
And not a parody, a satire. And Americans were not really conditioned. They didn't really understand satire. This is Mr. Show. This is pre-Stephen Colbert.
I think Colbert's where it's really, that was the shift where now people get
they didn't understand satire. Yeah. Like real satire, Jonathan Swift satire.
Yeah.
Canadians do. It's ingrained in us. We're just naturally satirical.
Maybe it's SCTV. Do you think that's where
But that's parody.
That's still parody. But there's
it's satirical.
There's a satirical level.
But I mean, it's like the idea. It's just very much in our DNA.
Yeah.
But it was not in the American DNA then. And Canadian comedy is more sophisticated. That sounds snobby, but it is. I think it's not as obsessed with the bodily functions. It's not as much fall down, go boom.
Well, I think we have, luckily, the ability here to try. Like, you don't have to aim as broad historically.
Absolutely.
I think now it's shifting though in Canada.
It is shifting, absolutely. But so there's that reason, and then another of the huge reasons is our own. It's our own fault, but I own it and I'm proud of it. I don't think we should have done anything different. But we had a character in the movie called Cancer Boy.
Yeah.
And Paramount, they were constantly trying to take things out, and they were adamant that would not go in. And we were adamant it would go in because we dug our heels in. And we decided that was quintessential Kids in the Hall. And to take that out would be taking out our soul. So we fought. We said, no, we won't. And so it came down to a real basically, Mexican standoff. And Lawrence said, if you don't take this out, they're not going to be behind the movie. And we just went, fuck, so what? And they pulled all the advertising.
Wow.
So we kind of shot ourselves in the foot, but, I still think Cancer Boy is one of the greatest things in the movie. And you look at things today, and it's hard to believe that that's what derailed our film.
Yeah.
Because, it's hardly insulting. I don't really understand political correctness. I don't really understand the war on comedy that's happening right now. I don't get it. It's not healthy. It's just not good for society. And that comedy should be a place where people are allowed to take off the brakes. It should be a safe space. And anyways, I know we're not talking about that, but we just really we were artists, and we were gonna do what we were gonna do, and it was a disaster. I mean, it killed us for 5 years. We didn't talk to each other for 5 years, and then we came back together again in 2000, and then we've been together ever since.
It's weird because that's one of those movies that the definition of a cult movie.
It really is.
It's one of those that you can go back to, and I still watch it, and I still find stuff.
Yeah, and I love it.
And it's aged really well.
I think it's aged really well, and I love it. I'd love us to do another one. Like, I'd like to do another type of film, because we are talking about doing more things together. But I'm very proud of it. But it's basically, the other thing was, we were all involved. All of our lives were falling apart.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why we took on depression, because we were all to a man, all 5 of us. Some worse than others, but it was definitely the trough of my life.
And it's weird because I think from the outside, it felt like that would have been the peak for you guys. Because I think
I know.
It was like, oh, these guys are like I remember seeing Kevin. I grew up in Riverdale, and seeing Kevin walk down the street one day, and I still that's my biggest celebrity sighting. Still at that point,
And Kevin's so easy to see because he's always walking on the street.
And he locked eyes with me and held the gaze till we had to break, and it was
That's very Kevin.
It was awesome, and but you guys from the outside, and I guess that's totally now having been a little bit through.
You get that,
yeah. It's not like it looks.
No, it's not. It's not like it looks, and we really should have been. Yeah, we should have been just having the time of our life. Yeah. It should have been champagne breakfast every day. And so when I see young people that are, on that trajectory, I want to say to them, don't screw it up.
Yeah.
This most likely won't happen again.
Yeah. And you're not going to know where the peak was until after you've passed it. So
and
everything.
Please don't get caught up in the little minutiae.
Don't get caught up.
And remember that your partner, you love them, and you hate them now, but you just wait it out.
Yeah.
You can't tell people that.
No.
But if I'd only known, to think that at our peak, I was never more unhappy. It's weird.
It's probably like that for a lot of people,
I think it really is. I think it really is. I mean, because fame can be a terrible thing. Mm-hmm. It can be extremely destructive. I mean, I think it's generally a disaster in most people's lives.
I look at it almost like an acquired brain, not to make light of that. But
I think that's exactly
it changes you.
It absolutely does.
And you can't stop the change.
No.
And you're trying, and then you see yourself one day and you're like, I've changed.
I'm changed.
I'm just I'm small.
But still, you get it.
Like compared to yourself.
But I'm the same way with people that I know that are much bigger, and I still understand what they're going through. But I look at friends of mine that are really famous, and I don't know if I could have survived that.
Yeah. Like I look at Kanye West. I remember seeing an interview with him on Much Music the first time he came out, and he was just amazing. Yeah. Articulate.
Yeah.
And then you see him now, and it's like he has to be constantly on guard.
He's a clown.
And also, and I remember actually watching on Much Music the making of Brain Candy thing they did on movie television.
Oh, yeah.
And watching it, and even then being like, these guys seem kind of bummed out. And it was like, they're interviewing you guys, and And it's such a shame that building doesn't do anything with that footage, because I would love to watch that stuff.
I had no idea. I don't even remember that.
It was like...
I was basically in a state of shock for that film. I barely remember half of it. I mean, I do remember it, but I was literally a zombie.
Yeah.
And yet I go, I give a pretty good performance.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, we're all really good. I mean, the fact that we made that film when the four of us were not talking to Dave.
Well,
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, crazy. And to think about it now, like me and Kevin and Dave are doing Sketchfest, the three of us.
Yeah.
We're not even doing Kids in the Hall in a month. It's weird. It just is weird. We've done so much to each other. There's nothing we can do to ruin it anymore.
No. And I think that's a great way to kind of tie it up, but I do want to ask one more question about that movie.
Oh, yes.
Have you ever had to run into Danzig from Brain Candy? Bruce McCullough's parody of him, I imagine.
No.
That does not sit well with that guy.
I bet it doesn't.
No.
Because he doesn't seem like he has as much of a sense of humor.
No, I don't think so.
And he's totally doing dancing.
He's definitely the sideburns, everything about it. It's definitely Danzig.
Yeah, and he's playing a humorless rock star.
It's kind of spot on. And
it is
perfect satire.
It is one of Bruce's best performances. It's pretty great.
And I just wondered if you'd ever wanted to...
Did you ask Bruce? Has he?
I did. I forgot to ask him, but that's what I was going to be like. I wonder if, because you're in L.A., running Danzig at a party and stuff. Well, Scott, I would love to have you on again.
Oh, I would love it.
The documentary, and this has been amazing. As I kind of talked to you off mic before this is like... You, to me, have informed so much of who I am as
really
a performer and as a fan of comedy and as a fan of just humanity, I guess. So I really appreciate it. Anyway, thank you so much
Thanks
for coming
very
on the
much.
show. High five.
Yes.
Okay, we're coming back. This is like bonus stuff because you started to tell the story and I just got to hear it.
Well, I was just going to talk about one of the things that I found that really thrilled me was I discovered years ago that Johnny Rotten, John Lydon, was a huge Kids in the Hall fan.
That's awesome.
And not only a huge Kids in the Hall fan, but a massive Buddy Cole freak. In fact, and someone actually said, you got to read this. They showed me an interview with him where they said, we hear that they're making a movie of your life. Who do you want to play you? And he said, Buddy Cole. Who? He goes, Buddy Cole, look it up. If you don't know who Buddy Cole is, this interview's over.
That's amazing.
And I heard these stories. People would say, John Lydon, I heard he went into some meeting where he said, I will not do this movie unless Buddy Cole plays me. It's not even me, not me, Buddy Cole. So I'd heard these stories.
Yeah.
And then when the Sex Pistols did that reunion tour, would it be 10 years ago, 15 years ago?
With the Filthy Lucre tour, was it that?
That's the one. Yeah. Is that long ago?
Goldfinger and
13 years
Stabbing
ago.
Westward opened in Toronto.
I saw them in LA with my manager Terry.
Yeah.
And I was dancing the whole time like a maniac. I'd never seen the Sex Pistols. Even then, it was so great to see. And then afterwards, there was a huge, scrum of people wanting to get backstage. This is LA.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of celebrities as well, like Tom Arnold and other celebrities there. And they were all waiting to be picked to see if they could get in to meet John Lydon.
Yeah.
And the security guard came, he looked over the crowd, and he came up to me and goes, you. Are you Scott Thompson? I go, yeah. He goes, you. And I go, only you. And Tom Arnold goes, what about me? He goes, no. He only wants to see you. And I said, can I bring my manager? He goes, yeah. And we were brought in, only us. And I proceeded to get drunk with him.
Wow.
We had a really fun night. He was with his wife, and she had a broken leg, I remember. She had her leg in a cast. And the four of us just drank. Had a wonderful time.
That's awesome.
And he said, yeah, I'm a huge Buddy Cole fan. I was just like, I cannot. And he gave me the ultimate compliment. He said that he thought Buddy was a punk.
That is amazing.
Buddy didn't give a shit. And I thought, yeah.
That's awesome. Was that...
He got it.
Was that like... As like someone that found empowerment through, music from the Sex Pistols, was that like some sort of like, I did it?
Absolutely. Like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Johnny Rotten loves Buddy Cole. I can die. Like, it just felt like, he understands where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Like, other people would say, some simpering, silly sissy, but Buddy Cole doesn't take prisoners, and he kicks ass. And it was a huge thrill for me. Yeah,
That's incredible.
That's a pretty good story.
That is an incredible story. I'm glad we got that. Scott, one more time.
Thank you.
My friend.